muscle tissues. Muscle tissues have an elongated shape. They're also sometimes called muscle fiber. Muscle tissues can shorten and thicken, which means they are contractile. Movement of any body part is caused by muscle cells pulling on their attached ends. The three types of muscle tissue are skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. Skeletal muscle tissue are long, thread-like cells that are striated and contain many nuclei. Their functions is voluntary movement of skeletal parts. The location of skeletal muscle tissue are muscles usually attached to bones, are shorter shells, single, and have a central nucleus. The function of smooth muscle tissue is involuntary movements of internal organs. The location of smooth muscle tissue are walls of hollow internal organs. Cardiac muscle tissue. Cardiac muscle tissue are branched cells that are striated and contain a single nucleus. The function of cardiac muscle tissue is heart movements. The location, the heart muscle.
Skeletal muscle tissue. Skeletal muscle tissue forms muscles that usually attach to bones and that are controlled by conscious effort. This type of tissue is named for its location. These skeletal muscles are also called voluntary. They can grow up to 2 or more than 40 millimeters in length. Skeletal muscle tissues are striated, which means the fibers contain alternating light and dark bands called striations that are perpendicular to the long axes of the fibers. Skeletal muscle fibers are not all alike in function or structure. For example, skeletal muscles vary in color depending on their content of myoglobin. Skeletal muscle fibers also contract with different velocities, depending on their ability to split ATP. They also vary due to the metabolic processes they use to generate ATP. Skeletal muscle tissue are classified into 3 types: type 1 fibers, type 2 fibers, and type 2A fibers. How skeletal muscle tissue work? A message from a nerve cell can stimulate a muscle cell to contract by causing protein filaments within the muscle cell to slide past one another. Then, the muscle cell relaxes when nerve stimulation stops. Skeletal muscle move the head, trunk, and limbs and enables us to make facial expressions, write, talk, sing, chew, swallow, and breathe.
The next type of muscle tissue is smooth muscle tissue. It is called smooth muscle tissue because it lacks striations. Like you know, striations are thread-like cells that have alternating light and dark cross markings. Can you stop? Usually, smooth muscle tissue is 5 to 10 UM in diameter, which means that smooth muscle tissue is smaller than skeletal muscle tissue. It is put together with gap junctions, and if you remember from the cells unit, gap junctions are channels that are linked to the cytoplasm of adjacent cells. The structure of smooth muscle tissue is spindle shaped. The nucleus contains SER because this SER provides calcium storage, and calcium is important to begin contractions of the smooth muscle tissue. It is also filled with a lot of mitochondria because it requires a lot of ATP. The job of smooth muscle tissue is to control involuntary and slow contractions. This is controlled by the spinal nerve centrus with no direct involvement to the brain. So smooth muscle tissue can be found in hollow internal organs, and these are some examples. In the integumentary system, smooth muscles are around blood vessels to regulate blood flow to superficial dermis, and it elevates the arrector pili hairs. Cardiovascular system. Smooth muscle tissue surrounds blood vessels to help regulate blood pressure. Respiratory system. The contractions and relaxations of the smooth muscle widens the diameters of the respiratory passageways and changes the airflow resistance. Digestive system. There is a lot of smooth muscle tissue surrounding the stomach and intestines, so the digestion of food can occur. Urinary system. There is smooth muscle tissue in blood vessels of the kidneys to alter the filtration rate. Also, it exists in the uterus and the urinary bladder to excrete urine out of the body. Finally, in the reproductive system, layers of smooth muscle tissue exist in males to move sperm along. In females, the smooth muscle helps move oocytes along the reproductive tract. Also, contraction in the walls of the uterus helps in delivering a baby.
The last type of muscle tissue is cardiac muscle tissue. And cardiac muscle tissue is special because it is the only type of muscle found in the heart. The heart beats around 100,000 times a day and needs strong cardiac muscles to function. Cardiac muscle tissues make up the walls of the heart, and its main purpose is to pump blood through the specialized chambers in the heart and into the blood vessels. This specialized type of tissue shares similarities with both skeletal and smooth muscle tissue. Like skeletal, cardiac muscle tissues are striated. As a result, this type of muscle tissue is branched and interconnected in complex networks. Like smooth, cardiac muscle tissues work involuntarily, meaning that the muscles can function without being stimulated by nerve impulses from the brain. Each cardiac muscle contains a single nucleus, and when these cells touch each other, they form a specialized intercellular junction called an intercalated disc. This connection allows easy movement for ions and small molecules to move from one cell to another.